Mr. and Mrs. George Jetson.
Of course, Mr. Jetson. We're expecting you.
The show that predicted the future was canceled in its first season because almost nobody could see it. ABC debuted The Jetsons on September 23, 1962, as the first program it had ever broadcast in color. There was one problem. In 1962, fewer than 3% of American homes owned a color television set. The show that was specifically designed to showcase ABC's new color broadcasting capability was being watched by the overwhelming majority of its audience in black and white. The flying cars, the robot maid, the gleaming towers of Orbit City stretching up through the clouds, the whole visual argument of a world made better by technology. All of it was being received in monochrome by a country that wasn't ready for what was being shown to them. The Jetsons was canceled after 24 episodes, and then, over the next 50 years, it became one of the most prophetic pieces of popular entertainment in American history, predicting flat-screen televisions, tanning beds, smartwatches, video calls, robotic home systems, and the culture of technological convenience with an accuracy that still generates genuine astonishment when people look at it carefully. 15 facts today, spanning the original primetime run, the 1985 revival, the 1990 theatrical film, and the franchise that never fully stopped. One of these facts involves the technical gymnastics required just to broadcast the show in color when ABC owned no color equipment. Another involves a prediction so specific it's almost uncomfortable. And the one we close on is about why a 60-year-old cartoon still has things to say about the world we're actually living in. Let's count it down. 15. ABC had to borrow NBC's equipment to broadcast its own show. This is the production detail that most Jetsons histories skip because it requires explaining the specific state of American television infrastructure in 1962. And it is genuinely extraordinary once you understand it. ABC had committed to broadcasting The Jetsons in color.
After all, I'm a darn good digital index operator.
This was a deliberate strategy. Color television was the future. ABC was staking a claim on that future, and The Jetsons was their flagship demonstration. The show had been produced in color. The plan was for color to be seen. There was a fundamental problem. ABC had no color equipment. Not in their affiliates, not in their broadcast facilities, not anywhere in their technical infrastructure. The network that had just committed to color broadcasting was entirely unprepared to actually do it. The solution required asking a direct competitor for help. Every Sunday, the team behind The Jetsons took both a 35mm master print and a 16mm safety copy to NBC's facilities in Burbank. NBC would run both prints simultaneously, the 16mm as backup in case the 35mm broke, and transmit the color signal down AT&T phone lines to ABC New York for the East Coast broadcast. The process was then repeated later on Sundays for the West Coast feed through ABC's Hollywood operation. ABC was borrowing its competitor's broadcast infrastructure to air its own primetime programming. The result was visible to under 3% of American households. The elaborate technical arrangement, the borrowed equipment, the simultaneous dual prints, the AT&T lines stretching coast to coast, produced a color broadcast that virtually nobody could see. The same logistics, incidentally, allowed the Flintstones to make its color debut the following week. NBC Burbank was now available for another Hanna-Barbera show, and the infrastructure was already in place. 14. The show was deliberately built as the Flintstones' mirror image. There was nothing accidental about the structural relationship between the Jetsons and the Flintstones. Hanna-Barbera and ABC designed one as an explicit reflection of the other. The Flintstones, which had debuted in September 1960, was already a proven prime-time hit, a domestic comedy set at the opposite extreme of human history in the Stone Age, where modern suburban family life was recreated using dinosaurs and prehistoric animals as the technology. A nuclear family in a house, with a car, a best friend next door, an unhappy boss at work, and domestic arguments that any 1960s viewer would have recognized instantly. The Jetsons was the same show, moved from 10,000 years in the past to 100 years in the future. The family configuration was identical. A bumbling but well-meaning father, a patient and capable wife, a teenage daughter, a younger son, a dog, and a domestic worker who kept the household running. The weekly format was the same, the comedy structure was the same. The workplace antagonist, Mr. Spacely replacing Mr. Slate,
Yeah, and I got a Martian history test. Can't miss it. George Elroy.
served the same dramatic function. Even the character names reflected the intent. The Flintstones were Wilma, Betty, Barney, names from the past. The Jetsons were Judy, Elroy, Jane, names that sounded like they could be from tomorrow. Hanna-Barbera had built the most successful animated show on television and then built a second one from the same blueprint, relocated it in time, and put it on the same network. The formula was proven, the logic was sound, the execution was technically beautiful, and the audience still didn't come because Walt Disney was on at the same time. 13. Walt Disney beat the Jetsons in the ratings, and ABC couldn't fight back. The Jetsons was placed against Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color and Dennis the Menace. And that scheduling decision tells you almost everything you need to know about why a show this good in technical and creative terms still failed to find an audience in primetime. Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color was not simply a popular show. It was a family institution, a Sunday night viewing ritual that American families had built into their weekly routines that carried the full weight of Disney's cultural authority, and that had the added commercial advantage of being produced by the company that had taught American parents that television could be trusted with their children. Every week, it offered a combination of live-action adventure, classic Disney animation, documentary content, and the specific warm authority of the Disney brand. The Jetsons was offering a different proposition, a new animated family comedy set in the future from the studio that had made The Flintstones, airing on the network that was least equipped to broadcast it. Against Disney on Sunday night, the Jetsons didn't stand a chance in the ratings. The cancellation after one season was not a verdict on the quality of the show. It was a verdict on what happened when you put a very good new program directly against one of the most powerful television brands in American history, using technical infrastructure borrowed from a competitor, in a format fewer than 3% of your audience could fully experience. The show failed to survive its own circumstances. The show itself was not the failure. 12. George Jetson's work week was a satirical comment that became a prediction. George Jetson worked 1 hour a day, 2 days a week. This was presented as a joke, a gently satirical image of labor so automated by technology that human employment had been reduced to token participation. George's job, pressing a single button repeatedly to operate a machine that ran itself,
Okay, the futuristic lobby wins.
was an intentional absurdism, the ultimate destination of a labor-saving technology culture. The humor landed because it was so obviously unrealistic. Nobody believed in 1962 that technology would ever reduce the standard American workweek to 2 hours. It was the kind of joke about the future that you could make precisely because the future was so far away and so unknowable that any image of it could be as extreme as the comic purpose required. And yet, in 2024, serious economists, labor researchers, and technologists are actively debating the possibility of a 4-day workweek as automation reshapes the employment landscape. The argument that advanced technology might significantly reduce the amount of human labor required to maintain an advanced economy is not a fringe position. It is a mainstream economic conversation, backed by data from multiple advanced economies where experimental reductions in working hours have produced maintained or improved productivity. George Jetson's 2-hour workday was a gag in 1962. In 2024, it is approximately where some economists believe the trajectory of automation is pointing. The Jetsons didn't predict that specific outcome with scientific precision, but it gestured, through comedy, toward a real question that the mid-20th century was beginning to ask about what technology would do to human labor. And the question hasn't stopped being worth asking. 11. The show predicted the smartwatch, the video call, and the flat screen. This is the entry where the accumulation of the Jetsons' technology predictions becomes genuinely striking, not because any single prediction is impossible to explain by reference to general space-age optimism, but because the combined specificity of what the show got right is hard to dismiss. The Jetsons depicted wrist-mounted communication devices in 1962, wearable technology that functioned as a personal communicator tied to the individual wearer's identity and location. The Apple Watch launched in 2015. The show depicted video telephone communication, the ability to see the person you were speaking to in real time via a screen from a fixed terminal in your home. Video calling was commercially available before the show's 1985 revival.
The girls need me for their protest meeting at the United Planets building.
But the mainstream consumer version arrived with Skype in 2003 and became ubiquitous through FaceTime and Zoom. The show depicted flat, wall-mounted television screens. The standard home television in 1962 was a large, deep cathode ray tube housed in a wooden cabinet. The flat-panel television became commercially mainstream in the early 2000s. None of these predictions came from scientific research. They came from optimism and comic intuition. And they were right, repeatedly, specifically, uncomfortably right. If this kind of real history, the predictions, the people, and the decisions that built the shows that shaped us, is what you're looking for, subscribe. We do this every week. 10. ABC aired the show in color that almost nobody could see, then canceled it because nobody watched. Here is the specific irony at the center of the Jetsons' original primetime failure, spelled out completely. ABC broadcast the show in color because they wanted to demonstrate color broadcasting capability and attract the viewers who had invested in early color television sets. In 1962, those viewers represented fewer than 3% of American homes. The show attracted those viewers. The color broadcast worked, technically, but 3% of American households was not sufficient to compete with Walt Disney's wonderful world of color for overall ratings dominance. The show was then canceled because its ratings were insufficient to justify its production cost. The production cost was high because the show was visually ambitious.
I wonder what's keeping George. He's late tonight.
The detailed, futuristic environments, the complex mechanical animation of the robots and flying cars, the care given to the visual language of Orbit City. The per-episode cost was substantial by the standards of early 1960s animation. The audience that could have appreciated that visual ambition, the households with color televisions, was too small to generate the ratings the show needed. The audience that was actually watching, the households seeing it in black and white, couldn't experience the visual element that justified the expense. The Jetsons was canceled for being too expensive to make for an audience that couldn't fully see it. It was a circular trap. The show's visual ambition required color required a color-equipped audience, the color-equipped audience was too small, and the audience that was large enough couldn't access the color. 23 years later, when color television was in virtually every American home, and the original 24 episodes were running in syndication on all 3 major networks, the show finally found the audience it had always been made for. By that point, it had been canceled for 2 decades. 9. Penny Singleton was already famous before she was Jane Jetson. When Penny Singleton provided the voice of Jane Jetson, patient, capable, and perpetually managing a household whose technology was simultaneously miraculous and infuriating, she was not a newcomer to American entertainment. She had a specific and substantial cultural history that predated the Jetsons by more than 2 decades. Singleton was the actress who played Blondie in the Blondie film series, a sequence of 28 low-budget comedies produced between 1938 and 1950.
Honey, it's your friend Gloria.
I'll be right there, George.
Based on the enormously popular newspaper comic strip by Chic Young. The Blondie films were a domestic comedy franchise that ran across 12 years, depicting the adventures of Blondie and Dagwood Bumstead in a world of comic domestic mishaps. Singleton's Blondie was warm, capable, and perpetually dealing with a husband who was well-meaning and disaster-prone. And then, 12 years after the last Blondie film, she was the voice of Jane Jetson, warm, capable, and perpetually dealing with a husband who was well-meaning and disaster-prone. The parallel between Blondie Bumstead and Jane Jetson was not accidental. The domestic comedy genre had specific archetypes that recurred because they worked. Singleton had spent 12 years perfecting one version of the capable wife archetype in a completely different medium, and her specific warmth, the quality of someone who is managing a situation with affectionate exasperation rather than genuine frustration, translated directly into animation. She voiced Jane Jetson from the original 1962 episodes through the 1985 revival, spanning more than 2 decades. The actress, who had begun in film comedy in the 1930s, was still voicing one of Hanna-Barbera's most beloved characters 50 years into her career. 8. Mel Blanc voiced the boss while dying. Mel Blanc, the most celebrated voice actor in American history, the voice of Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Barney Rubble, and dozens of other iconic characters, voiced Cosmo G. Spacely, George Jetson's explosive, diminutive, perpetually furious boss. Spacely was a specific comic construction, a small man with enormous authority and the emotional regulation of a cartoon volcano. His function in the show was to externalize the workplace pressures that George carried home, to be the embodiment of the anxiety that came with being employed in a system that would fire you as readily as it paid you.
And I won't even give you a pay cut.
Gee, thanks, Mr. Spacely. You're all heart.
Blanc brought the character a specific fury that came from decades of playing characters whose identity was built around extreme emotional expression. When the 1985 revival was produced, 2 decades after the original episodes, with the original voice cast reunited, Blanc was 77 years old. He had survived a near-fatal car accident in 1961 that had left him in a coma and required years of recovery. He was, by 1985, in deteriorating health. He recorded his Spacely performances for the revival series from a reclined position, unable to sit upright for extended recording sessions. The engineers worked around his physical limitations. The character's voice, the specific explosive energy of Spacely's perpetual outrage, was produced by a man who was physically in significant difficulty, delivering it with the same commitment and precision he had brought to every character across 5 decades. Blanc died in July 1989. His last recorded Spacely performances appeared in the 1990 theatrical film Jetsons. The movie, released posthumously, he is credited in that film. His voice is in it. His Spacely is indistinguishable from the character he had been playing since 1962. 7. The 1990 film had a hidden environmental message. When Jetsons, the movie, was produced as a theatrical release in 1990, the creative team faced a specific challenge. How do you take a 28-year-old television property and give it something genuinely new to say, rather than simply extending the same formula into a longer format? Their answer was an environmental narrative. In the film, Spacely Sprockets opens a new plant on an asteroid, and George Jetson is sent to manage it, only to discover that the plant's operations are destroying the underground home of a community of small alien creatures. The conflict between corporate expansion and environmental harm, between the convenient fiction that there are no consequences to resource extraction in uninhabited spaces and the reality that apparently uninhabited spaces are frequently inhabited by someone, was built into the film's central plot. This was 1990, not 2024. Environmental consciousness in mainstream American family entertainment was considerably less common. The specific framing, a corporation discovers that its profitable operations are destroying something that was there before it arrived and has to decide what to do about that knowledge, was a more pointed argument than most theatrical animated films of the era attempted. The film was not a critical success. Its production history included the mid-production replacement of original voice actress Janet Waldo as Judy Jetson, who was replaced by pop singer Tiffany for her commercial appeal, a decision that generated controversy and which Waldo described publicly as deeply painful. The film's box office was modest, but the attempt to use the Jetson universe as a vehicle for a genuine environmental argument, embedded inside a family comedy about a cartoon family in flying cars,
We all have to tighten our belts.
Any more belt tightening, sir, and I'm gonna have to...
reflected a production sensibility willing to ask whether the technology optimism of the original show needed any qualification 60 years later. 6. The show ran on all 3 major networks across its history. This is a piece of broadcasting history so specific that most people who watched The Jetsons across their childhood never registered it. The Jetsons is one of only a handful of American television series to have aired on each of the big 3 broadcast networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, during its run. The original 24 episodes debuted on ABC in primetime in 1962. Following cancellation, ABC placed them in Saturday morning reruns for the 1963 to 1964 season. Then CBS picked up reruns from 1964 to 1965, and again from 1969 to 1971. NBC carried the show in various syndicated and Saturday morning forms from 1965 to 1967, returned it in 1971, and continued running it on and off through the early 1980s. The same 24 episodes aired in various combinations and scheduling arrangements across all three major American broadcast networks over 2 decades. The show that had been canceled for insufficient ratings in 1962 became, across its syndicated and rerun life, one of the most broadly distributed animated programs in the history of American television. This kind of multi-network history is genuinely uncommon. Most canceled primetime shows disappear into syndication on independent stations rather than cycling back through their competitors. The Jetsons' specific combination of brief runtime, high visual quality, and undeniable audience appeal, particularly for younger viewers who encountered it for the first time in reruns, made it a consistent acquisition target across decades. 5. Rosie was the show's most radical character. Rosie the robot is, by any reasonable analysis, the most interesting character in the Jetsons, and she is consistently undervalued in discussions of the show's cultural significance. On the surface, Rosie is the Jetsons' domestic robot. She cleans, she organizes, she keeps the Skypad apartments running, while Jane focuses on other activities. She has mechanical arms and a boxy robot form. She serves the family, but the way she was written, particularly in the original 1962 episodes, is considerably more interesting than her role suggests. Rosie has opinions. She expresses them. She has loyalties within the family that occasionally conflict with her
What do you think, darling? I got the works.
official role as employee. She demonstrates something the show treats as self-evident, but which was genuinely unusual for a household staff character in early 1960s television. She has a personality, and that personality generates genuine story. Rosie's voice in the original episodes was provided by B. Benaderet, who was also the original voice of Betty Rubble in The Flintstones, and would go on to star in Petticoat Junction. The specific warmth Benaderet brought to the character gave Rosie a quality of genuine humanity that the robotic form was designed to complicate. She was the most human character in a show full of humans. Later iterations of the franchise revised and expanded Rosie's role. She became, across revivals and reboots, a more explicitly valued and emotionally present character. The Jetsons were decades ahead of their moment in presenting an artificial domestic helper whose interior life warranted storytelling attention. 4. The show was set in 2062, exactly 100 years in the future. When the Jetsons premiered in 1962, the world they depicted was set in the year 2062, not approximately in the future, not an unspecified century hence, exactly 100 years forward from the broadcast date, with a deliberateness that was noted at the time and that invites a specific kind of reflection now. In 2024, we are 38 years away from the Jetsons' timeline. The flying cars are not here. The interplanetary commuting infrastructure is not here. Orbit City is not here, but here is what is here. Voice-activated home systems that respond to natural language, robotic domestic appliances, flat screens covering significant portions of walls, video communication from wrist-mounted devices, same-day delivery of almost anything to your door, digital assistants available at all times, automated food preparation that approaches the push-button simplicity the show depicted. The show got the scale wrong. The 21st century doesn't look like Orbit City from the outside. From the inside, from the lived experience of an American middle-class family's daily interaction with technology. It looks considerably more like 2062 than 1962 did. The Jetsons imagined the future wrong in its broad architecture and with remarkable accuracy in its specific domestic texture. It missed the flying cars and got the smart home. That's a more interesting kind of prophecy than a mere list of predictions suggests. 3. The voice cast reunited entirely, 23 years later. In 1985, Hanna-Barbera made a decision that was, for the animation industry, genuinely unusual. They commissioned 75 new episodes of a show that had been canceled
I need to get away from things for a couple of years.
Jetson!
23 years earlier, and they brought back the entire original voice cast to perform them. George O'Hanlon returned as George Jetson. Penny Singleton returned as Jane. Janet Waldo returned as Judy. Dawes Butler returned as Elroy. Don Messick returned as Astro and various other characters. Mel Blanc returned as Spacely. Jean Vanderpyle returned as Rosie. The voice cast that had recorded the original 24 episodes in 1962 was reassembled in 1985, some of them in their 70s, all of them returning to characters they had not played in over 2 decades. This kind of long-span cast reunion in animation is genuinely rare. Voice acting relationships with characters tend not to survive cancellations, contract renegotiations, deaths, and the general entropy of time. The fact that almost every original voice actor was both available and willing to return 23 years later for a syndicated production rather than a prestige network commission says something specific about the loyalty these performers felt toward the characters and toward each other. The new episodes were produced at a cost of $300,000 each, significantly more than the original episodes had cost, reflecting inflation and the expanded ambition of the production. They introduced new characters, updated the technology references to include things like VHS players and pocket calculators that hadn't existed in 1962, and extended the Jetson universe into 3 additional seasons that gave the original 24 episodes a much longer life than a single primetime cancellation had suggested was possible. 2. The show captured a very specific cultural moment and couldn't escape it. The Jetsons premiered in September 1962. 2 months later, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the closest it had ever come to nuclear war. A year before that, the Soviet Union had launched Yuri Gagarin into orbit, extending the space race into direct competition with the United States over who would control the future. The American public was simultaneously excited about technology and terrified of what technology in the wrong hands could produce. The Jetsons was the distillation of every space-age promise Americans could muster. It was also, as the Smithsonian's Matt Novak wrote for the show's 50th anniversary, a product of a very specific time. The years leading up to the Jetsons' premiere in September 1962 were a mix of techno-utopian and Cold War fears. The show answered the Cold War anxiety by simply not acknowledging it. In the Jetsons 2062,
Sorry, Jane,
I'll take a chance.
there are no nuclear weapons, no geopolitical conflict, no suggestion that any of the anxieties of the early 1960s had persisted into the century ahead. The future was not complicated by the past. It was purely optimistically, unreservedly better. That specific optimism, the sincere belief that technology would solve problems rather than create new ones, that the trajectory of the future was upward, that the American family's encounter with progress would produce comfort and convenience rather than disruption and dislocation, is what makes the Jetsons a document of its time as much as a prediction of the future. It was the best version of 1962's hopes for what was coming, and it couldn't account for the 1970s, the 1980s, the economic disruptions, the environmental costs, or the ways that technology's arrival would complicate the picture alongside improving it. It wasn't wrong to be optimistic. It was incomplete, and the incompleteness is as revealing as the predictions. 1. What the Jetsons was actually about. And here is the thing that 60 years of flying cars and robot maids has been pointing toward, underneath all the animation. The Jetsons is a show about what technology promises and what it actually delivers. In every episode, the Jetson family exists in a world of extraordinary technological abundance. Push-button food, automated transport, robotic household help, and yet the fundamental texture of their lives is recognizable, familiar, and frequently frustrated. George is stressed about work. Jane is managing a household. Judy is navigating teenage social dynamics. Elroy is dealing with school. The technology is everywhere, and yet the human problems remain. This is not an accident. The writers weren't ignoring the irony. They were making it the joke. The comedic premise of the Jetsons is specifically that all the technology in the world does not prevent you from having a difficult boss, a complicated family, financial anxieties, and the perpetual sense that life requires more from you than it gives back. In 2024, most of the people watching this live in a world that the Jetsons would recognize as technologically advanced in ways 1962 could not have fully imagined. And most of those people still have complicated relationships with their bosses, their families, their finances, and the feeling that life is more demanding than it should be. The technology arrived. The problems didn't leave. The Jetsons figured that out in 1962 and made it funny every Sunday night for 24 episodes. The show that was canceled for being ahead of its time turned out to be a permanent resident of the present, because every era is the future someone once predicted, and every future has a George Jetson in it, pressing his button, paying his bills, and trying to get home in time for dinner. 15 facts, one family, one question worth debating. Which specific Jetsons prediction has turned out most accurate? And which one are you still waiting for? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe for more of this. We'll be back next week.